Welcome to Pigeon Healthy. There's a killer in your loft right now. You probably can't see it. Your birds might look fine today, but this parasite is silently draining their health, weakening their immune systems, stunting growth in young birds, destroying performance in racers, and killing squabs before they ever have a chance. I'm talking about coccidiosis, caused by Coccidia parasites, and it's in nearly every pigeon loft in the world. The question isn't whether you have it, you do. The question is whether it's under control or whether it's quietly destroying your flock. Most pigeon keepers don't realize they have a coccidiosis problem until it's severe. They see young birds that aren't growing well and assume it's genetics or poor feeding. They see adult birds with inconsistent performance and blame training or weather. They lose squabs and think the parents aren't feeding properly. They deal with recurring diarrhea and treat it as a bacterial infection. All along, Coccidia is the real culprit, and because it's not addressed, it keeps cycling through the flock, generation after generation, never quite killing all the birds but never letting them reach their full potential either. Today I'm going to explain exactly what coccidiosis is, why it's so common and so insidious, how to recognize it in both obvious and subtle forms, how to treat it effectively, and most importantly, how to control it long-term so your birds can actually thrive instead of just surviving. This is information that will fundamentally change the health of your loft if you apply it correctly. Let's start with what Coccidia actually are. Coccidia are single-celled parasites, specifically protozoans that live in the intestinal tract of birds. There are multiple species of Coccidia, and pigeons are primarily affected by Eimeria species, particularly Eimeria columbarum and Eimeria labiana. These parasites have a complex life cycle that takes place partly in the bird's intestines and partly in the environment. Here's how it works. A bird ingests Coccidia oocysts, which are essentially eggs of the parasite, from contaminated food, water, or surfaces in the loft. Once inside the intestinal tract, the oocysts release sporozotes, the active form of the parasite. These sporozotes invade the cells lining the intestine. Inside the intestinal cells, the parasites reproduce through multiple stages. This reproduction destroys the intestinal cells, causing damage to the gut lining. The bird's intestines become inflamed, damaged, and unable to absorb nutrients properly. Eventually, the parasites produce new oocysts, which are shed in the bird's droppings by the millions. These oocysts contaminate the loft environment. Under the right conditions of warmth and moisture, the oocysts sporulate, meaning they mature and become infectious. Other birds ingest these sporulated oocysts, and the cycle continues. The entire life cycle takes about 5 to 7 days from ingestion to shedding of new oocysts. This means Coccidia can build up rapidly in a loft, especially when conditions favor oocyst survival. And here's the key point that makes Coccidia so difficult to eliminate. The oocysts are incredibly hardy. They can survive in the environment for months or even years. They resist freezing, many disinfectants, and dry. They only need moisture and moderate warmth to sporulate and become infectious. This is why Coccidia is endemic in almost every loft. You can never completely eliminate it from the environment. So management becomes about controlling the parasite load to levels that don't cause disease. There are two forms of coccidiosis, clinical and subclinical. Clinical coccidiosis is the obvious form. Birds are visibly sick. They have watery, often bloody diarrhea, severe weight loss, fluffed feathers, lethargy, refusal to eat, dehydration, and they may die, especially young birds. This form is easy to recognize and usually prompts treatment, but it's actually less common than the subclinical form. Subclinical coccidiosis is the silent killer I'm talking about. The birds don't look obviously sick. They're eating, flying, and seem normal at first glance, but they're not thriving. The Coccidia are present in the intestines in moderate numbers, causing chronic low-grade damage. The intestinal lining is constantly inflamed and healing, which impairs nutrient absorption. The birds never absorb nutrition as efficiently as they should. Growth is slower in young birds. Adult birds have less energy and stamina. The immune system is constantly fighting the parasites, so it's less able to fight other infections. Performance in racing or breeding is below potential. The birds are surviving, but not thriving. And many keepers never realize this is happening because the birds don't look sick enough to investigate. Let me tell you the signs of subclinical coccidiosis, because these are what you need to watch for. In young birds from weaning to 6 months, you'll notice slower growth compared to what you'd expect for the breed. The young birds never quite fill out or develop the muscle and body mass they should. Their feathers may be duller and slower to develop. They're more susceptible to other infections like respiratory disease or canker. Some may have intermittent loose droppings, not severe diarrhea, just droppings that are wetter or less formed than they should be. Young birds may show less energy and playfulness than healthy young birds. In racing pigeons, you'll see inconsistent performance where a bird performs well one race and poorly the next. Without clear reason, the birds take longer to recover after hard races. Stamina and endurance are reduced. Birds lose weight during training or racing season despite adequate feeding. There's increased susceptibility to illness during the stressful racing season. Training times are slower than they should be for the bird's genetics. In breeding pairs, you might notice reduced fertility rates where eggs don't hatch as often. Squabs grow more slowly and may be weaker. Parents seem less vigorous and take longer to recover between rounds. Squabs' mortality is higher than it should be, with babies dying at a few days to a few weeks old for no clear reason. Often this is actually Coccidia overwhelming their immature immune system. In all birds, you may see intermittent droppings that are wetter, greener, or less formed than normal, though not the watery, bloody diarrhea of clinical disease. Birds may have slightly decreased appetite or be pickier eaters. There's an overall lack of bloom or vitality. The birds just don't look as healthy and vibrant as they should. Weight is difficult to maintain. Birds stay on the lean side even with good feeding. The immune system seems weak, with birds catching every illness that goes through the loft. The problem is that all these signs are subtle and can be attributed to other causes. That's why Coccidia is so often missed. Keepers blame genetics, feed quality, training regimen, weather, or bad luck when the real issue is parasites silently stealing health and nutrition. How do you confirm coccidiosis? The gold standard is fecal examination under a microscope. You collect fresh droppings from the birds you're concerned about. Take the sample to an avian vet or a lab that examines bird feces. They'll do a fecal float to concentrate the oocysts, and then examine the sample under a microscope. If Coccidia oocysts are present, they'll see them and can even count them to give you an idea of the parasite load. A low count, maybe a few oocysts per field, indicates the bird has been exposed but may be controlling the infection. A moderate count suggests subclinical disease. A high count, with many oocysts in every field, indicates clinical disease. However, fecal exams aren't perfect. Coccidia shed oocysts intermittently, so a negative test doesn't guarantee the bird doesn't have Coccidia. Also, many adult birds have Coccidia but have developed immunity, so they shed low numbers of oocysts but aren't sick. This is actually normal and expected. The issue is when young birds, stressed birds, or immunocompromised birds have high loads and are showing symptoms. If you can't get a fecal exam or want to assess your flock's status yourself, you can do a presumptive treatment trial. If you treat the flock for Coccidia and see improvement in the subtle signs I described, that suggests Coccidia was indeed a problem. This isn't as definitive as a confirmed diagnosis, but it's practical and often used by experienced keepers. Now let's talk treatment. The most common and effective treatments for coccidiosis in pigeons are sulfa drugs and amprolium. Sulfadimethoxine and sulfacusilline are sulfa drugs that kill Coccidia. They're given in the drinking water typically for 5 to 7 days. Dosage is usually 1 milliliter of the commercial solution per liter of water, but follow product instructions. These drugs are effective and well tolerated. Side effects are rare but can include reduced appetite or lethargy in some birds. Sulfa drugs work by interfering with folic acid metabolism in the Coccidia, essentially starving them. Amprolium is another common anti-coccidial drug. It works by blocking thiamine uptake in Coccidia. It's also given in drinking water for 5 to 7 days. Dosage varies by product concentration, commonly around 2 milliliters per liter of water. Amprolium is very safe and effective. It's actually a thiamine analog that the Coccidia mistake for real thiamine, which disrupts their metabolism. Birds can synthesize their own thiamine, so they're not as affected. Toltresoril is a newer anti-coccidial that's extremely effective. It's given as a single dose or a 2-day treatment, which makes it convenient. It kills Coccidia at all stages of their life cycle, not just some stages. This makes it more thorough than sulfa drugs or amprolium. Toltresoril is widely used in Europe and increasingly available elsewhere. Dosage is typically 7 to 25 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, given orally. For a flock treatment, it can be calculated and added to drinking water. Which treatment should you use? For routine prevention or treatment of subclinical disease, sulfa drugs or amprolium work well and are economical. For severe clinical outbreaks, toltresoril may be more effective because of its comprehensive action. Some keepers rotate between drugs to prevent resistance, though resistance to anti-coccidials is less of an issue in pigeons than in poultry. Treatment protocol for a flock with suspected subclinical coccidiosis would be to choose an anti-coccidial drug Administer it in drinking water as the sole water source for the treatment period, typically 5 to 7 days for sulfa drugs or amprolium, or 1 to 2 days for toltrezorel. Ensure all birds are drinking the medicated water. Remove other water sources. After treatment, provide fresh, clean water. Monitor for improvement in droppings, energy, growth, and overall health over the next 2 to 4 weeks. Repeat treatment in 3 to 4 weeks if needed, especially in young birds or during high-risk times. Now here's an important point. Treatment kills the Coccidia in the birds, but it doesn't eliminate oocysts from the environment. Those oocysts are still in the loft, in the droppings, in the nest boxes, on perches. So after treatment, if you don't clean and disinfect, the birds will just get reinfected immediately. This is why Coccidia is so hard to control. You have to treat the birds and clean the environment. Environmental management is absolutely critical for controlling Coccidia. Here's what you need to do. Clean the loft thoroughly. Remove all droppings, old bedding, and contaminated material. Scrape perches, floors, and nest boxes. Disinfect with a product that kills Coccidia oocysts. Not all disinfectants work. Coccidia oocysts are resistant to many common disinfectants. What works? Ammonia solutions at high concentration, around 10%, are effective, but toxic. Use with extreme ventilation, and remove birds first. Heat is very effective. Flame or steam cleaning surfaces, kills oocysts. Drying also helps. Oocysts sporulate in moisture, but desiccate and die in dry conditions. Keeping the loft dry is one of the best environmental control. Commercial Coccidiostats disinfectants, specifically formulated to kill Coccidia oocysts, are available from agricultural suppliers. Products containing quaternary ammonium compounds at high concentration can work, but check the label specifically for Coccidia. After cleaning and disinfecting, keep the loft as dry as possible. Good ventilation, absorbent bedding, frequent removal of droppings, all reduce moisture and slow oocyst sporulation. Sunlight is also helpful. UV radiation from direct sunlight kills oocysts. Outdoor aviaries with good sun exposure have lower Coccidia loads than dark, damp indoor lofts. Provide clean food and water. Food and water containers should be positioned so birds cannot defecate in them. Raise containers off the floor. Use narrow opening drinkers that prevent birds from stepping in the water. Change water daily. Feeders should be cleaned regularly. Reduce overcrowding. The more birds per square meter, the higher the environmental contamination, and the greater the exposure. Adequate space reduces Coccidia pressure. Separate young birds from adults when possible. Young birds are most susceptible to Coccidia, and most likely to shed high numbers of oocysts. Adults often have immunity and shed fewer oocysts. Mixing them means young birds get heavy exposure. Raising young birds separately in clean conditions until they develop immunity reduces disease. Manage stress. Stress suppresses immunity and allows Coccidia to proliferate. Stressors include overcrowding, poor nutrition, concurrent infections, transport, racing, breeding, and abrupt changes in environment or routine. Minimizing stress helps birds control Coccidia naturally. Now let's talk about prevention, in young birds specifically, because this is where Coccidia does the most damage. Young squabs get their first exposure to Coccidia shortly after leaving the nest. The parents have Coccidia, the environment has oocysts, and the babies ingest them. In the first few weeks after weaning, young birds are building immunity to Coccidia. This is a critical period. If the exposure is low to moderate, the birds develop immunity without getting sick. If the exposure is overwhelming because the loft is filthy and contaminated, the birds get clinical Coccidias and may die or be permanently stunted. The strategy is controlled exposure. You can't and shouldn't try to raise birds in a completely sterile environment with zero Coccidia. They need exposure to develop immunity, but you want that exposure to be gradual and manageable, not overwhelming. Here's how. Keep weaning areas as clean and dry as possible. Remove droppings daily. Use fresh bedding frequently. Limit the number of young birds per pen to reduce contamination buildup. Consider prophylactic anticoccidial treatment during the high-risk period. Some keepers give a low dose of anticoccidial in the water continuously for young birds from 4 weeks to 4 months old. This doesn't eliminate Coccidia, but keeps the load low enough that birds build immunity without getting sick. Others prefer to treat therapeutically at the first sign of trouble, watching droppings closely and treating if they see wetness or decreased growth. There's debate about which approach is better. Continuous low-dose prevention reduces disease, but may delay immunity development because birds aren't exposed to enough Coccidia to stimulate a strong immune response. Therapeutic treatment only when needed allows natural immunity to develop, but risks some birds getting sick. Many keepers use a middle approach: keep young birds very clean and dry, monitor them closely, and treat at the first subtle signs of coccidiosis before it becomes severe. This allows some exposure and immunity development while preventing clinical disease. Adult birds with established immunity rarely get sick from coccidia, but they can still carry and shed oocysts, and their immunity can wane if they're stressed. During racing season, breeding season, or molting, when birds are under physiological stress, it's not uncommon to see coccidiosis flare up even in adults. Many racing keepers give a preventive anticoccidial treatment before the racing season starts, and sometimes mid-season to keep coccidia in check during this high-stress time. Now let's discuss natural approaches to controlling coccidia. Anticoccidial drugs are effective and sometimes necessary, but there are natural methods that support the bird's ability to control coccidia and reduce reliance on drugs. These aren't replacements for proper hygiene, and they won't cure severe clinical coccidiosis, but they're valuable tools for long-term management. Apple cider vinegar has mild anticoccidial properties and creates an acidic environment in the gut that coccidia don't thrive in as well. Add 1 tablespoon of raw, unpasteurized apple cider vinegar with the mother per liter of drinking water. Provide this 2 to 3 days per week continuously or daily during high-risk periods. It also supports overall gut health and digestion. Garlic has natural antiparasitic and antimicrobial properties. Fresh crushed garlic can be added to feed or given in water. 1 clove crushed and soaked in 1 liter of water overnight, then strain and provide the garlic water, or add crushed garlic to moist feed. Some commercial garlic supplements for birds are available. Garlic won't kill coccidia outright but may reduce their multiplication. Oregano contains compounds like carvacrol and thymol that have anticoccidial effects shown in research studies. Dried oregano can be added to feed, about 1 teaspoon per kilogram of feed. Oregano essential oil can be added to water, 1 to 2 drops per liter, though use food-grade oil and ensure it's well mixed. Oregano supports gut health and has antimicrobial properties that reduce secondary bacterial infections that often accompany coccidiosis. Probiotics help maintain healthy gut flora, which compete with coccidia, and support immune function. Adding probiotics to the diet, especially after anticoccidial treatment, which can disrupt gut bacteria, helps restore digestive health. Commercial avian probiotics or even plain yogurt with live cultures can be offered. Thyme is another herb with antimicrobial and antiparasitic properties. It can be used similarly to oregano, added to feed or provided as a tea in drinking water. Dionysius earth is food-grade fossilized algae that some keepers add to feed as a general parasite control. Its effectiveness against coccidia, specifically, is questionable because coccidia are internal parasites and DE works mechanically, but it's safe and may provide other benefits. The most important natural control is simply excellent hygiene and dryness. Coccidia cannot complete their life cycle without moisture. A dry loft with good ventilation, frequent cleaning and low humidity will have far lower coccidia loads than a damp, dirty loft, regardless of what supplements or drugs you use. I want to address a common mistake. Some keepers, upon learning that coccidia is everywhere and can't be eliminated, give up on control entirely. They figure if it's always present, there's nothing to be done. This is wrong. Yes, coccidia is endemic, but the difference between a low-level exposure that birds handle easily and a high-level exposure that causes disease is entirely within your control through hygiene, dryness, and occasional treatment. It's like saying germs are everywhere, so hand washing is pointless. Germs are everywhere, but hand washing reduces exposure to a level your immune system can handle. Same principle with coccidia in pigeons. Another mistake is over-treating. Some keepers treat for coccidia constantly, month after month, year-round. This is unnecessary, expensive, and potentially harmful. Constant drug use can disrupt gut flora, may contribute to drug resistance, and prevents birds from developing natural immunity. Treat when needed based on symptoms or confirmed diagnosis, then maintain control through hygiene. Don't use anticoccidials as a substitute for cleaning the loft. Let me share a real-world example. I had a client who bred show fantails, beautiful birds, excellent genetics, but the young birds were always small, slow to develop,
and had a high mortality rate in the first few months. The keeper blamed weak genetics and poor parent feeding. I visited the loft. It was overcrowded with young birds packed into small pens. The floor was damp from accumulated droppings. Water dishes were dirty with droppings in them. I took fecal samples from several young birds, massive Coccidias and shoal, some of the highest I'd seen. We implemented a complete program, treated all birds with sulfadimethoxine for 7 days, completely cleaned and disinfected the loft, removing all old bedding and droppings, reduced the number of birds per pen by half, raised feeders and waterers off the ground, changed water daily, added apple cider vinegar to water twice weekly, started giving young birds a prophylactic dose of amprolium in water from weaning to 3 months old. The difference was dramatic. Within 2 months, the new crop of young birds was visibly healthier, growing faster, fully feathered, and vigorous. Mortality dropped to almost zero. The keeper couldn't believe these were the same genetics. They weren't weak birds. They were good birds being destroyed by parasites. That's the insidious nature of Coccidia. It robs potential silently. You don't know what your birds could be until you get the parasite load under control. A bird performing at 70% of its potential because of subclinical Coccidia isn't obviously sick. It just seems like an average bird, but control the Coccidia, and suddenly it's performing at 95% and you realize it was never average. It was being held back. So here's what I want you to do. First, assess your loft honestly. Is it clean and dry, or is there accumulated moisture, droppings, damp bedding? If it's not clean and dry, fix that immediately. Second, observe your birds for the subtle signs of subclinical coccidiosis. 1 described, young birds growing slowly, adults lacking stamina, intermittent loose dropping. If you see these signs in multiple birds, suspect Coccidia. Third, get fecal samples checked if possible. Knowing your baseline Coccidia load is valuable. Fourth, treat if indicated. If you have confirmed Coccidia or strong suspicion based on signs, do a therapeutic treatment course. Fifth, clean and disinfect thoroughly after treatment. Sixth, maintain control through hygiene, dryness and periodic preventive treatment during high-risk times like weaning or racing season. This isn't complicated or expensive. The drugs cost a few dollars. Cleaning costs nothing but time, but the impact on your flock's health can be transformative. Coccidia is killing 90% of lofts silently, not by causing obvious death but by stealing performance, growth, and vitality day after day, year after year. You can stop it. You can take control. And when you do, you'll see your birds thrive like never before. If you found this video valuable, please share it with other pigeon keepers. Coccidia is so widespread that nearly every keeper needs this information, yet many don't realize how much it's affecting their bird. Leave a comment if you have questions or experiences with coccidiosis. Your insights might help others, and subscribe to Pigeon Healthy for detailed, science-based information on pigeon care that genuinely improves your flock's health. Thank you for watching. Clean your loft, control those parasites, and watch your birds reach their true potential.